Warning. The Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of unprotected talk, borders, language, culture. And here he is, Michael Savage.
Blue Monday, how are you, Blue Monday? Got to work like a slave all day. Here come Tuesday.
Well, the thin smoking man in the White House has not disappointed the world again. Again, the thin smoking man, being the peripatetic traveler that he is, had nothing to say about ISIS. Instead, he talked about the press and how mean they were for reporting on the wholesale slaughter in Paris and in Mali. He told the press not to do that. He said that's how they win, when you report on what they're doing. Now, of course, it's true that France, Russia, even England now is joining in the fight against ISIS, but Obama says there is no ISIS. The thin smoking man says there is no ISIS whatsoever. It's a figment of our imagination, and we shouldn't be intimidated because we're all protected as well as he is, you see. And so over the weekend, we read that Obama is totally and absolutely not only inept, but clueless on ISIS. Most Americans want war declared on this group of subhumans, but not him. He said we're wrong to even pay them any attention. Meanwhile, even the socialist dunce in Europe, Hollande and Cameron, the incompetent, are supporting each other in their fight against ISIS along with Russia. Everyone seems to know what needs to be done to defend the innocents in this world, all except the thin smoking man from God knows where. And so over the weekend, I found the story that attracted my attention on, of all places, RT, RussianTelevision.com. And it says, Gangs of New York, Sicilian Mafia offers Big Apple protection from psychopathic ISIS. I said, are you kidding me? So I said, this I have to read. So I'll read the story. The son of a New York mob boss has given Islamic State a stark warning, saying if they're planning any attacks in New York, they will have to contend with the Sicilian Mafia. I said, is this real? So I read on. The notorious crime syndicates say they want to do their bit to protect locals. And they name someone. Giovanni Gambino, the son of a key figure in the Gambino mob organization, says the Mafia is in a much better position than the security bodies, such as the FBI or Homeland Security, to give New Yorkers the protection they need. Here's what he said in an interview with NBC News, as cited by Reuters. He said they often act too late or fail to see a complete picture of what's happening due to a lack of human intelligence. You hear this? Gambino, who is trying to carve out a career as a Hollywood screenwriter, says that following the horrendous terror attacks in Paris on November 13th, protection is more important than ever. He said the world is dangerous today, but people living in New York neighborhoods with Sicilian connections should feel safe. We make sure our friends and families are protected from extremists and terrorists, especially the brutal psychopathic organization that calls itself the Islamic State. Gambino Jr., who was brought up in Torretta, a mountainous area overlooking Palermo, the capital of Sicily, says the Islamic State fears the Sicilian Mafia, and this has been one of the main reasons why they have not tried to set up any underground cells in Sicily. The Italian island has not suffered from any terrorist attacks, and Gambino feels that the Mafia can offer protection in New York to help curb the rise of the Islamist terror group and help people see the mob in a new light. Gambino goes on and says, the Mafia has a bad reputation, but much of that's undeserved. As with everything in life, there are good, bad, and ugly parts. The rise of global terrorism gives the Mafia a chance to show its good side. Now, what's interesting about this is that I think he's right, number one. Number two, since we have a clueless, thin, smoking, hostile human being in the White House surrounded by a Girl Scout sorority, we, the Americans, will turn to anybody for protection. Especially when we know we have an idiot running Homeland Security, a former corporate lawyer, Jad Johnson, flooding America with illegals from Syria, it doesn't matter where, Jad Johnson. The only one I trust in the entire intelligence apparatus as an American is the head of the FBI, who says that there are 1,000 investigations going on right now against potential Muslim terrorists. I'd like to see the FBI share that file with this gentleman, Mr. Gambino. I'd like to see them share the intel on these 1,000 individuals they're tracking. I kind of doubt they'll do it. Because you know the 1,000 investigations will be reduced to zero in about 30 days. There'll be no investigations. But nevertheless, we're going to talk about that today because this is a subject that I'm quite interested in. I want to remind you that way back when, in the year 2000, I wrote a book called The Savage Nation. And on pages 145 and 146, I wrote this. To fight terrorism, I'd suggest the FBI go to the worst gangs in America and find the baddest of them, and then bring them into the inner sanctum, into the president's cabinet. I'd say, look, boys, here's our situation. We're at war with these terrorists. Tell us how you would stop it. And I wrote, I guarantee you they'd solve it much faster than those frat boys in Washington. My suggestion isn't a new idea. It's been done before, during World War II. The government of elitists knew there was a problem on the waterfronts of America. They knew the Germans had Gestapo spies all over the East and the West Coast. They also knew who controlled the waterfront. They did. Back then, they went to Lucky Luciano and cut a deal with the Mafia. The Mafia made sure the Nazis didn't function on the waterfront anymore, period. End of story. If a German spy was found, he'd get a meat hook in his back and end up swimming with the fishes. Call it longshore justice. That was the end of 99% of the Nazis on the waterfront in New York. It's been done before. It must be done again or we're all cooked. Today our leaders hire smart morons from Harvard and Yale to analyze the situation. I say it's time to stop with the frat girls and the sorority girls. There, I gave you the brass tacks. That was what I wrote many years ago. And then there's an article on this. I think I touch on it again in Government Zero. I'm not 100% sure. But we know this. When we have a zero government, the people themselves need to get themselves together to protect themselves from the clueless dunce in the White House. It's that simple. And I found an article on this, how the mob helped the U.S. military in World War II, in the Daily Beast, written a while ago. And they give a little more detail on the collaboration between gangsters and naval intelligence during World War II, which the government, by the way, denied for 40 years. And it began after the cruise ship Normandy caught fire and capsized at Pier 88 in Manhattan on the heels of Pearl Harbor. You see, the luxury liner was being retrofitted for U.S. troop deployment when it was bombed in early February 1942, right in New York City. It's a true story. Now, the U.S. Navy suspected Nazi sabotage. Naval officers were rebuffed by the longshoremen on the mob-controlled New York waterfront, men averse to snitching for anybody. And so, for help, the Navy turned to mobster Meyer Lansky, the Jewish gangster. Our government approached Lansky in part because it knew that he had been waging a campaign of intimidation against domestic Nazi sympathizers, mostly members of the German-American Bund. That's a whole separate story. And I'll tell you that one in a minute. And so for Operation Underworld, Lansky recruited his childhood friend Benjamin Bugsy Siegel and Murder Incorporated's Louis Lepke Buchalter. These Jewish killers used guns, knives, and bats to break up Nazi rallies and send a message to Nazi sympathizers. As Maya Riley acknowledged in his notes, we weren't yeshiva boys. There's a famous movie picture of, there's a picture of this, of a Nazi rally in Madison Square Garden, which is broken into by these guys. They had bats, brass knuckles. They beat the Nazis up and drove the sissies off the stage. Suddenly, the Heil Hitlers were running scared, and the adage, the brown shorts, had a real meaning right then. Then later on, when Nazi saboteurs slithered into the U.S. in the summer of 42 to blow up railways, chemical plants, and Jewish-owned department stores, did you know any of this? All of you morons from Harvard? Mob-controlled union members dropped a dime on the operatives that had checked into Manhattan hotels. Eric writes, we'll never know what the boys did to the Nazi sympathizers. They didn't report that to the FBI. Now, what's interesting about this story is that was a trade-off made on this. You see, the imprisoned Charles Lucky Luciano was, I believe, exiled into Sicily, and he couldn't come home. So they made a deal that if Luciano gave his orders to his friends, I think he was in prison or in Sicily, I don't know where he was, and he got rid of the Nazis, they'll let him come back to America. So Luciano provided the Navy with contacts in Sicily to, in addition to that, to assist Allied invasion planners. And in return, Lucky Luciano's 30 to 50-year prison sentence was commuted. That's when we had a government who knew what to do. in a time of war. Right now we have a moron who doesn't even know we're in a time of war. The moron thinks it's only time to go to war with the American people who want their borders, language, and culture defended. So there is a precedent for this if it is true. And as a special treat for the Savage Nation prior to Thanksgiving, no one else in radio or television has him, so far as I know, but Mr. Gambino will join us today on the show to talk about what his friends are offering to protect us from the scum in the psychopathic, anti-human ISIS organization. Meanwhile, Obama remains clueless on ISIS while America is demanding that war be declared. The thin, smoking man from nowhere doesn't even know what the American people want. He's so clueless, he only knows what Al Sharpton wants and what Loretta Lynch wants. God knows if he even knows what they want. How do you feel about this? I sincerely mean that. Do you feel that it's, immoral to work with crime members to save us when you have a government that is out of control, meaning a government of itself, by itself, and for itself? A government that will bring in Syrian refugees against all common sense, let alone to protect us from potential terrorists. As I said to you on Friday, even if 1 amongst 100 or 1 amongst 1,000 is toxic, why would you bring any of them in? I said months ago, build them a large area in a safe place in Syria. Have it built from the ground up. Give them the hammers and the nails and the saws. Bring in contractors, the greedy contractors, the ones who worked under Bush and Cheney. Let them build this new city for Syrians. And let them live there. Don't bring them here. And then after it settles down in Syria, let them go back and rebuild their own country instead of taking our country down. Now, what is wrong with that idea? How do you feel about this when you have Barack Hussein Obama, who thinks he's John Wayne, but he's closer to John Wayne Gacy? He's taking a real stand. He's saying it's absolutely vital for every country, every leader to send a signal that the viciousness of a handful of killers does not stop the world from doing vital business. Well, that's easy to say when you're surrounded by 5,000 Secret Service agents. It's not easy to say when you're going to a shopping mall this Thanksgiving and you don't know if that headscarf over there has a bomb underneath it. In plain English. That's what the American people think. Don't tell me what I'm supposed to think, Obama. So people are afraid that they're going to be bombed at a shopping mall. And he's telling you, don't worry about a thing. Just go about your business. After all, what the heck? It's your life, not his. As you know, John Wayne was an American icon who embodied the American spirit. What did he show in the movies? Toughness, individuality, manhood, dignity. All things that have been beaten out of American culture by the academics, the vermin in the media, and Katzenberg, Ratzenberg in Hollywood. The same Hollywood that gave us a John Wayne and supported Americans through wars and the Great Depression, that showed us how great we are as a people, now defines courage and resolve as American men who should be embracing their inner woman and flaunting it for the world to see their weakness. And who's not acting that way? Well, our supposed enemies are not acting that way. Russia's not acting that way. China's not acting that way. They see the threats. In fact, the Chinese used flamethrowers over the weekend to root out some Islamist extremists in a cave. I know it didn't make it to Anderson Cooper or Jake Tapwater. They weren't there to photograph the flamethrowers and run to the press with it. It was a little tougher than waterboarding, giving them a little flame on their headscarves in the caves. But the Chinese know this. If you don't snuff the virus out early, the virus spreads. They know what to do. They know how to protect their people. They know how to judge their enemies and their friends. So here we stand at a point in history when a real John Wayne is needed. When the rest of the world is looking at us, looking for that hero that John Wayne portrayed in the movies, to stand up to the absolute evil that is right in front of everyone's eyes to see. They're looking at us. They're looking at America to put the fire out and let these animals know that we're not to be messed with. But today's John Wayne, Barack Hussein Obama, will only look into that sunset